So I'd like to begin today by introducing Michael Singer, the author of The Untethered Soul and also the author of The Surrender Experiment. And we're here with our New Harbinger publication staff to celebrate the 10th anniversary of this phenomenal book that has changed so many lives. And actually at this point, we know it's changed over 1 million lives because sales have reached over 1 million copies, and it's been translated into 32 different languages worldwide, so it's reached even more than 1 million, honestly. This book has really changed my life personally as well. Just have to mention that. So thank you for writing it, and thank you for publishing it with New Harbinger. The Untethered Soul is a book that begins by walking you through your relationship with your thoughts and emotions, helping you uncover the source and fluctuations of your inner energy. It then delves into what you can do to free yourself from habitual thoughts, emotions, and energy patterns that limit your consciousness. And finally, with perfect clarity, this book opens the door to a life lived in the freedom of your innermost being. So, Mickey, I was thinking we could perhaps just begin with a few definitions of the terms that you use in the book. And I know people use these words in different ways, and I'd love to hear you talk about what your definition is of self-realization.
You start at the end.
Start there.
Everything has levels, obviously, right? And so let's take the simplest level of the term self-realization. You are in there. I always play with people when I start, and I ask, "Hi, are you in there? Hi, are you in there?" Right? I've done that for 45 years, and I've never ever had anybody say no. Okay? Hi, are you in there? And then the question is, who is that is aware that they are in there? And our tendency is to think that I am the body. I am this package of body and mind and emotions. That's the I. That's who I am. Right? And the book very clearly, one of the main things the Untethered Soul does, is walk you through showing you that that's not true. All right? That if your body, once your body was 15 years old, and now it's 50 years old, right? It has gone through some rather dramatic changes, but you're still in there. And the you who's in there now looking at a 50-year-old is the exact you that was in there looking at a 15-year-old. And you know that, all right? So you didn't change one iota, but your body went through. So on. Some people have accidents or something goes wrong and they lose a limb or something. It's still them. They did not change one iota. They're just aware that, my body's not in the same state as it used to be. All right? So the question becomes, who is this that is looking at the body in the mirror, not what is the body they're looking at? Who are you? All right? And then you work through the process of, I'm my mind. I have these thoughts, right? But who's aware of your thoughts? I don't want to get into the whole discussion we're going to have today in just one answer, but you are aware of your thoughts. The exact you who looks at your body in the mirror is the you that notices that your mind is saying, I'm not sure what he's talking about, or I've studied this. Come on, we've studied this stuff for years. Everybody knows this already. Whatever the mind's saying, you are watching that. So the question becomes, in the end, who are you? When your heart goes through different changes, some people come and they say, my heart hurts. I always tell them, I'm not a therapist. They wouldn't let me be a therapist. You don't want to come to me one-on-one. Because if you come to me and you say, my heart hurts, I'm going to ask you, how do you know? And that's not what you expect me to ask you. How do you know your heart hurts? And you're going to get mad at me and say, because I'm in here and I see the thing. Who is? Who are you that's watching your heart hurt? Is it the same you who watched yourself feel love? Watch your heart feel love? Now you're watching the heart hurt? Of course it is. There's you're in there. Self-realization, in its simplest sense, is to say you have realized who's in there. You have realized that you are not your mind, you are not your emotions, you are not your body, you're certainly not anything you're looking at, your car, your house. They can change, you're still there, right? Who is the unchanging one? Who is the one that's always there and has been in there from the beginning, all right? And someday you will be on your deathbed and you will be watching yourself take your last breath and watching your mind say, oh, I had a nice life or I haven't, and you just be there, you're there. So this is the self. This is the Atman. This is the soul. So self-realization is that you have returned to that seat of being. And that's the beginning of self-realization. That's the minimum. I have realized what I'm not. Okay? All right? Now the question is, who am I? Now that I've returned to the seat of my being, where did it come from? What is the source of consciousness? What is the source of self? All of that falls into the realm of self-realization.
And so there are these different aspects of our being, and part of this journey is realizing, by learning to watch your thoughts, that you have these different aspects to your being. Is that right?
You are the being that has these aspects.
Okay.
I'm not going to call the consciousness an aspect of your being. Just like as people say to me, do you believe people have a soul? And I like to use shock therapy. So I say, no, people don't have a soul. They are the soul. That's what the word soul means. You, who you are. You don't have one. You have a car, you have a purse, you have a soul. You are the one that has these things. So that aspect of yourself is yourself. It is the awareness of being. If I take away what you're aware of, you're still aware that it's not there. If I take away your awareness, it's over. I've turned off the light. There's nobody there. So that's who you are. All right? Then you are aware of these different aspects of your being. You are not an aspect of your being.
That's a good distinction. And so, how does this psyche develop in our being? I'm imagining that at some point, maybe when we were born, that we were more aware of our awareness, that we were perhaps operating more from our consciousness. And then the psyche starts to develop, and I'm wondering...
It's very deep. You're asking a very, very deep question. There are answers.
I'm wondering when that psyche starts to take over, essentially, and then how that develops, and how we become separate from
It's easy.
Yeah.
The answer is easy, but we're so lost in it that we can't see it. It is not true that when you are born that necessarily you are more centered in the seat of self and then some terrible things happen and you get that. The masters, Yogananda used to teach this, says the moment the consciousness, the self, drops into the body, the experience is so intense, it's overwhelming, right? It's like if you're all of a sudden thrown into the water with fish swimming all around. You've never been there before, right? It's so distracting, it's so powerful, the experience is so powerful that it pulls your consciousness into the experience. So that happens immediately, all right? That you have become separate from who you are because you're busy paying attention to the object of consciousness instead of your seat of consciousness. So the more distracting something is, the more powerful the experience is, the more distracting it is. Distracting is the most spiritual word you'll ever use. It means it pulls you away from yourself. It means consciousness. I was looking at that book, then you started talking, it distracted me. My consciousness went to you. All right? So when something distracts you, it draws your consciousness toward it. So when you drop into the body, when you take birth, right, your consciousness is pulled into this experiential, unbelievable experience of the senses coming in, of noises and sounds and things and blah, 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 right? And so it immediately becomes distracted into the body and into the world, okay? And then what happens is, it's not comfortable. There's a sense of loss of self, okay? I don't know who I am. Right? And this is where, as a psychologist, somebody who studies this stuff, it becomes very interesting in psychology. Then the self is not that the self-concept develops. We do it. We pull the self-concept around ourselves to protect ourselves. The self does that. The consciousness doesn't know itself. It loses itself. It's been drawn away from itself. So there's this sense of loss, a sense of discomfort, a sense of disorientation. It's very much like if somebody has amnesia. And when they wake up from amnesia, they're not comfortable. There's no one ever been comfortable when they wake up and they don't know who they are or who their family is or where they live or where they're. They don't know a single thing. They panic, right? That is what happens when you lose your seat of centered self. So now, because you are uncomfortable, you immediately try to define yourself, try to cling or hold on to things that will help you define the reality that you're dealing with, right?
To orient.
Exactly, and that's where the self-concept comes from. And as a mother, you know that starts pretty early, right? That they start developing, you're my mommy. That's the first one. That's my daddy. This is my crib. The psychologist will tell you the worst thing you can do to a child is put them in a different place every single night with different toys and different people. You understand that? Because they can't find the solidity of defining themselves. And so we start to develop this self-concept in our mind. That's why we call it a concept. It's not the self, it's a concept of self. A concept is something that's not real. It's a mental image, it's a mental thought, okay? So we start to develop in our minds, this is mommy, this is daddy, this is where I live, this is my crib, this is my toy, this is, except that's where the mind comes from. And that's why they're so strong about the mind in the Terrible Twos, right? It says not that you took my toy, you took me, right? I've defined myself in relationship to this object. Don't touch it. Don't take it away. And it's panic, right? You'll see the crying and the tremendous clinging to objects.
Yeah.
That it is the self, the lost self, the fallen soul, all right, that has lost itself, that is trying to redefine itself in these objects outside. But that doesn't stop at the Terrible Twos. We then develop not just objects, but a concept of ourselves as experiences happen to us. We define ourselves by the experiences we had. It's hilarious. Right? You are not the experience, you're the one who had the experience.
Oh my
but
gosh.
if I played Dorothy in third grade Wizard of Oz, right? And I'm the big hero and I did a great job, that becomes part of my definition of who I am. If I'm 30 years later and we're talking about the school play, there's a reunion, and somebody else says, I played Dorothy, you freak out. No, I played Dorothy in that play. You understand that? It's like 20 years later, you will fight for your right to hold on to your definition of yourself. Because you literally defined yourself as the one who played Dorothy, as the one who married Paul, as the one who has his 2 children, as the one who went to school over here. You're defining yourself as the experiences you went through. Because those are the images they're the data that went into your mind. And that's why every one of us define ourselves separately, differently, and our definitions of self keep changing. Right? If you say, well, I'm Paul's wife, what happens if you get divorced? Right? Well, now I'm Ben's wife. it's like you didn't die because you're not with Paul. You understand that? But you hold on inside of you. I'm the one who had that terrible experience with Paul. So that's how you develop this self-concept. Somebody once asked Yogananda, I like to turn back to the masters, right? Right? The masters are very deep. They said, what is the ego? You heard what Freud said about it, right? They literally asked a master, an enlightened master, what is the ego? And he said, the masquerading self. In other words, the facade you pulled over your consciousness to define yourself. It is the masquerading self. All right?
So we're building our personality in order to orient ourselves to this experience.
That's exactly right. To feel safe in the world. Look, there's all these objects going on out there. What's my relationship to him? What's my relationship to you? What's my relationship? That car's mine, not that one. Like, we're trying to define ourselves to keep ourselves oriented in the ever-changing world. And that's why we limit our universe to certain people, certain places, certain things, right? And try to keep it in order. Like some people say, oh, he's a control freak. Everybody's a control freak. Don't kid yourself. It's just somebody's a little more extreme than somebody else. You need things to be the way you think they are. Right? If you went home one day and your house wasn't there, I don't mean an empty lot. There was never a time it was there. And you went by and knocked on your neighbor's door and they don't know you. Right? You'd freak. You would freak out.
Right, because that's how you orient and know yourself.
That's correct. And
by
how
those
you
objects.
That's right.
That story. That place.
But it really has nothing to do with you. You're in there. You're experiencing the houses without your house the same as you experience the house with your house. You're the experiencer. You're the consciousness, right? But you have defined a mindset and you're resting on it to say, this is reality, right? According to GARP. This is according to you, right? And therefore, you need yours to be the way you defined it to be, or all hell breaks loose inside.
And we have so many emotions attached to those parts of our environment being where we want them to be. I mean, I'm just thinking about as you're describing the personality, they're very important to us. I mean, I guess that's the illusion
It's
so
deep. It's so beautiful to talk about this. Every single one of those emotions and all of the important to this is because you're panicked in there and lost. And this is how you're clinging, how you're defining that it's okay. That's why there's so much emotion behind it. The only real emotion is the fear. Is that deep, you know what I'm talking about, that deep fear that it will fall apart or something will go wrong or I will say something, right? There's just that underlying insecurity of, you know what you presented was fake. That's why you're selling it all the time. That's why you worry about what you look like and what you're wearing, and you meet somebody new, oh, I got to sell yourself again, or you did real well. Like, there's two situations that are really bad, right? One is you do bad and everybody boos you. The other is you do really, really good and they invite you back. You got to do it again. You put yourself on the line. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Right? You're risking failure, right? And
Right.
even the most powerful people feel this, and that drives them, right? So what you're driven by is the fear of failure. You're driven by the fear of rejection. You're pretty normal human stuff, isn't it? Right? That deep-seated fear is the original panic that I talked about. It's still there, that I'm lost. As long as I can get things to be the way I define them, I can feel safer. I can support it. We call it support, right? Support your concept. Now, I don't have to feel my panic all the time, but it's still there, right? You can be very happy with your family and everything's wonderful, and then somebody dies or somebody leaves. It's not so wonderful anymore. You fall right back into it. It doesn't change one single iota, right? It's like, so the question is, are you dealing with the core or are you dealing with the facade? And we are all dealing with the facade and trying to get the outside world to support the facade so that we don't have to deal with the core. Can you understand that?
Absolutely. I absolutely do. And the facade, it feels like so much is dependent on the facade functioning, right? To keep everything going in our lives that we've also built.
The analogy, go ahead.
No, please.
The analogy I like to use is you went to school, high school, whatever, with a person that was so insecure. He would never talk to anybody. He was always scared, very introverted. I mean, really, just really far out there, okay? And all of a sudden, you're grown up now, and you got your Facebook page, and somebody gives you a phone call, and it's this kid. And you have to think about it, and he's strong, talking, inviting you to come see him. He never used to go outside by himself. He's at a park. Would you meet me at the park? I happen to be in the town where you are, and so on. I'd love to see you again. And you sit there and say, God, you've changed a lot. He said, I have completely. I used to be so scared. I'm not scared now anymore. It's amazing. I can go anywhere. I don't feel the fear. You go there to the park. His name's Paul, and you're looking for Paul, and you don't see anybody, but you see the most amazing scene. You see about 10 of these giant, football player, muscle-type people in a circle, carrying Uzis and AK-47s, all of them, right? And all of a sudden you hear a little sound from inside the circle. Here, I'm here, it's Paul. Paul? Yeah, I'm in here, right? And Paul says, see, I'm not scared anymore. I don't feel fear anymore. I feel so secure, I feel wonderful, right? Whoa, that's what I'm talking about. That's what we do.
The bodyguards?
Our whole life is a bodyguard. The fact that the husband come on time, that people treat you the way you expect to be treated, the fact that every single thing happened exactly the way you need it to be, those are your muscle men and bodyguards. And as long as that's going on, you're okay, relatively. What if I go there and pay those bodyguards more than you paid them? 1, 2, drop. You have a heart attack. Now, Paul and Nick will freak out, isn't he? That's what happens when your world falls apart. That's what happens the minute anything is not the way you expect it to be. You have some trouble, don't you? If the car in front of you is driving a speed you're not comfortable with, it's not what you're used to, it's not the speed limit, you have trouble, don't you? You start talking in there and complaining, right? If your husband's 10 minutes late, if he comes home and you prepare dinner or got a special date's going to happen and you're in a bad mood, so he just walks through and goes in his room. Ooh, that's not okay, is it? That's not okay. There's all kinds of stuff goes on in there. That's the exact same stuff that Paul feels when one of those bodyguards falls down. My shield, my masquerading self, did not do its job of protecting me from myself. Spirituality, since we'll get there eventually, is all about dealing with yourself instead of hiding from yourself. Working your way past that panic, that fear, to where it will never return ever again, and there's nothing but love and joy, unconditional as to what is going on outside. The peace that passeth all understanding. That's why.
So what would be the first step on that?
You have to face it. Your first step is, like Freud said, recognition. You recognize, yep, it's true. I am constantly trying to get things my way. and I'm serious about it, right? There's a list of things that better be this way, and there's a list of things that better not be this way. And I am serious about that. And I am completely devoted to making those things happen and not happen, right? Well, that's not a very functional thing to do with your life. That is like Paul, we'll keep using the analogy, like Paul making sure he has enough money to make sure he pays off those bodyguards and make sure their guns are working and they're well trained. No, you're going in the wrong direction, Paul. You don't want that to be your life. Right? So the first is to recognize I have a problem and it's me. And I'm not going to solve it by hiding from it.
So it's not, the problem is not that my husband came home in a bad mood and passed by me and missed all of the amazing feast I prepared and the ambiance I created. That's not the problem. The problem is how I feel.
The problem is you can't handle reality because you've defined a particular way to, because you're insecure and the relationship isn't going exactly right, and you put a lot of energy into this to try to feel love and acceptance and pay the bodyguards, do the thing, make sure the guns are good, right? It's just exactly the same thing, and it didn't work, right? And now you feel worse, don't you? You feel more insecure. You feel, okay, that's what happens.
It's almost as if you're actually far more out of control by needing to be in control, because you're going to have to fluctuate.
That's exactly right.
With everything that happens that's out of your control.
Every single
So
thing.
in fact, you're totally out of control the more you're in control.
Well, the more you need to be. Right. Now, that's very deep what you just said. We define a world inside ourselves that supports our self-concept, and we need that because we're hiding from ourselves behind the self-concept, right? And because we define the world that way, we need the world to be that way.
Right.
But the world has nothing to do with what we made up. The world is what it is. It's reality. It's beating to a whole different drum. It's beating to science. It's beating, like, it better not rain today. It's my birthday. That's stupid. What are you doing? Rain has nothing to do with your birthday. It has to do with meteorology and low pressure zones, right? So you've now left yourself vulnerable to the unfolding of reality is going to destroy you.
Right.
So that's what you were saying, and
Exactly.
that's absolutely true.
So even if I sit down and I write my list to begin the day, and then I follow that list in order to basically make myself feel less insecure, the truth is I'm more vulnerable.
Yes.
Because things may interrupt that list that I don't have control over, and then I will be sort of subject to that experience.
If you are living your life to hide from yourself, you're not going to get anywhere. It starts, you ask me, how do you do this? It starts when you say, I don't want to live like that anymore. I don't want my state of being to be completely dependent upon somebody else's mood, upon how somebody else does or doesn't do, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, upon the unfolding of the weather, the unfolding of the world, right? I want to find my true being. I want to find me in here and be okay. Then I'll come into the world. It's not that you don't come into the world. Let me come into the world and be motivated by love, be motivated by compassion, be motivated by creativity, by inspiration, instead of be motivated by fear, which is what we are motivated by, right? Okay? It's like the most powerful of us try to stay really powerful, because the thought of, some of these very powerful people, the minute they're out of office or out of this or finances go wrong, they're jumping off buildings, right or wrong.
Right.
It did happen, didn't it?
Right.
Okay? That's because they were not powerful. They were supported by something because they were needing, and it was weak, and that strength came from by the conditional state. The moment that conditional state went away, well, it's over. I don't want to face this.
Okay, so Mickey, I would like to be okay. What should I do?
Well, first you recognize that despite all the games, and you're a powerful, successful woman, despite everything we're doing to try to be okay, that it could fall apart in a minute. In a minute. Just say one wrong thing, just, right? It lets you know it all the time, doesn't it? Right? Just sneeze at the wrong time, or burp, or it's like, it's so ridiculous, it's ridiculous, correct? Right? So notice that something inside is not okay, and it's trying to be okay by manipulating, controlling the outer environment. And then see how long you've been doing that. I always ask people, how long have you been doing that thing about trying to manipulate the outer environment so you can be okay inside? How about your entire life?
Right, exactly.
All right? It obviously doesn't work because you're still doing it. No, listen, understand that. If you keep doing something for 40 years to the best of your ability over and over again, and you're still doing it 40 years later, maybe you need to wake up and realize, gee, I think this doesn't work.
Like I would have been done by now?
Yes.
I should have been done by now.
Yes. Yes, you should be fine by now. Look how hard you've tried. All right?
Right.
Okay?
Right.
But you're just as vulnerable, and you have to just as much make sure everything's okay. Do you understand that?
I do.
As when you were in high school. It was just different things.
Yeah.
All right? So you first look at that and you decide, I don't want to live like that. Not it's wrong, not it's bad, but if I have one life to live, sitting on a planet spinning in the middle of nowheres, I ain't living it that way. I don't care about everybody else. They want to live it that way, that's their business, right? But I'm just sitting on a planet spinning in the middle of nowheres, and I'm scared to death. I'm constantly struggling. Why? Why? And you realize because there is something inside of me that is not okay, right? And I'm trying to hide from it. I'm trying to compensate for it. Why don't I just fix it? And that's the first thing, is it is fixable. It is fixable. Doesn't make any difference what you've ever done. It doesn't make any difference what anybody says, right? Period. It is completely and utterly fixable that you are not okay inside. And it has nothing to do with the outside. It has to do with the fact that you're disoriented in there and you've looked the wrong way. You've looked outside to define yourself instead of coming back inside to work with yourself. That's the difference, right? So I don't want to monopolize here. You can do it through questions, right? But that's a starting position.
Right.
Is you have to, it's called recognition of the problem. I've been looking outside to keep myself busy, entertained, distracted, so I don't have to deal with what's going on in here. And making everybody behave the way they're supposed to, et cetera, so I can be okay. I want instead to hands-on, directly start working with the part of me that's not okay. That's the spiritual path.
Okay. And the part of me, so let's go into that a bit more. And the part of me that's not okay, and moving more into that seat of awareness.
Okay, so you start, I always tell people, don't worry about big things. Just start with tiny little things, all right? Every single day, really, every moment of every day, something bothers you. It starts raining. Bothers you. I don't want to get wet. I don't have to get in my car when it's raining. I don't like when it thunders, all right? Somebody talks too loud. Somebody talks too soft. Too many people get into the elevator. Do you understand that?
I'm late. The kids aren't putting on their shoes. I need to get in the car.
Everything,
Right.
almost everything, causes some disturbance inside.
Right. The disturbance. Mm-hmm.
It causes some non-well-being. Well, maybe that's extreme. Maybe it's okay if it rains. I think it's very big of you, right? Since you can't do anything about it anyways, right?